talking about a few minutes ago, the young men in this passage that we read had to deal with one big question. It was a simple question, it was a profound question, it was a big question. And that question was, how do we get our friend to Jesus? This is a picture more of a contemporary town in Israel, but you notice the construction is the same as it was in the first century. These are houses that have flat roofs. Particularly during the summertime, often the folks would live on the roofs, and they would worship up there. It was like a big family room, and we know at least one occasion where a woman bathed on the roof. And it just struck me. Her name is Bathsheba, and she bathed on the roof. But they used the roof for a number of things, and a lot of the houses were multi-level houses. Different families would share, and oftentimes there were steps on the outside of the house that led up to the roof, so the roof itself was not particularly private. One of the ways that you know that this is not from the first century is you see the satellite dishes there. There they are. But the construction is similar. I just wanted to give you an idea of what the house would look like. But again, the question, their question, and I want it to be our question, how can we get our friend to Jesus? And you think about what was blocking their access, what the biggest obstacle, the obstacle to getting their friend to Jesus was people. And oftentimes that's the case. You know, we want to evangelize, but sometimes our life, either it's a lack of courage or maybe it's a lack of integrity, that is an obstacle to them coming to Christ via our influence to them. But people block their access. And many of the people who were surrounding Jesus at that time were more committed to their own agenda than they were to the needs of this man. They were more committed to their own curiosity. What's this rabbi going to say this time? They were more committed to their own learning. What Old Testament, what biblical references is he going to make, and how is he going to interpret that? They also were committed to checking out his orthodoxy, to make sure he didn't say or do something contrary to God's teaching. But the reality was that all that being true, they blocked out a real, immediate, personal human need. And some of these men, some of these religious teachers, and I say men because most of them were, some of these religious teachers were very sophisticated. They were committed to their religion and the rituals and rules, and they were dressed in their best attire, their religious finery. They were sitting there in seats of comfort and honor. And then there was this commotion, hubbubaloo, pandemonium, hubbub that disrupted the calm and tranquility of their catechism. A nice, quiet learning opportunity was improperly interrupted by noise, confusion, and falling plaster right in the middle of their classroom, until a big enough hole was made for a paralyzed man to be lowered on a stretcher by 4 men, each holding a rope. And can you just imagine seeing that adding our learning opportunity to it. That they were creating a bigger learning opportunity than they possibly expected. This man's obvious need was physical healing, but his deeper need was spiritual healing. His deeper need was forgiveness. He needed both. He received both. But remember, Jesus' healings had a point beyond the immediate personal human need. Any physical need, even something as dramatic as Lazarus being raised from the dead, or Jairus' daughter being raised from the dead, they were powerful for temporary. Lazarus died later, but our spiritual need, that's the eternal that God placed within us. And you remember when questioned about his messianic credentials by followers of John the Baptist, remember what Jesus said? After Jesus had finished, this is from Matthew, after Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John, who was in prison, heard what Christ was doing, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who was to come, or should we expect someone else? Are you the Messiah who we've been waiting for all these years?" And John was the last of the Old Testament, Old Covenant prophets who was preparing the way for the Messiah. "Are you the Messiah?" And Jesus replied, this is what Jesus said, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight. The lame walk. Those who have leprosy are cured. The deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor." He said, if you're looking for credentials that I am the Messiah, the credentials are the healings that you see, the changed lives. And the Bible doesn't say it, but I believe the day after this event, there were five young men who were now doing roof repair. What if their big question was our big question? Their big question, what do we need to do to get our friends to Jesus? What if that personally and corporately became our big question? What can I do to get my friend to Jesus? What do I need to do to help my family and friends and co-workers get to Jesus? I remember something my pastor said a long time ago. He said, it's true. You can lead a horse to water. What's the rest of it? You can't drink. And then he said, but you can with salt tablets. We are to be salt, becoming more and more refined and more pure. Somehow our lives ought to represent Jesus to the world. What my friend Lynn Evans called the love message. How we represent Jesus to the world. We love like we love. Where I teach at Southeastern University, on a lot of their literature, they have two words: be salt. Be the salt of the earth. Make people thirsty for Jesus. When we represent him to the world, and the more and more accurately we do so, the more and more we make people thirsty for him. We don't have to force anything down people's throats. there is satiation for this thirst. And that's Jesus. I know it wasn't a Christian movie or a Christian song, but I liked it when Aladdin in the movie saying, "You'll never have a friend like me." When we befriend people who need friends, do you know any who don't? When we befriend people who need friends, then we can introduce them, possibly, hopefully, prayerfully introduce them to our friends. Friendless people are vulnerable to falling. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. And I talk to people every day who have no one to help them up. They are desperately short of friends. They are needy of friends. And by the way, even a number of these Christian folks have really not found a friend in Jesus. They found somebody they talked about in church, and somebody who they worship in church, and somebody who other people talk about, but not a personal friend to them. Albert Camus, the philosopher, I think this is his quote. "Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Just walk beside me and be my friend." You meet people every day, and I meet people every day who need friends. I mean, flesh and blood friends on planet Earth. But they also need someone to be a friend, to lead them to the friend whose name is Jesus. "You are my friend," he said. "No longer servants, you are my friend." We sang the song. And I haven't researched this, but how many religions do you know of where the God of that religion offers to be the friend of the followers? I want to introduce my friend to my friend Jesus. And really, according to this way of looking at it, according to this definition, one of the best friends I ever had was a Quaker preacher by the name of John O. Rafferty. Because he's the one who drove 30-some miles out to visit us in our little house in Chippewa Lake, Ohio, the week after we had driven 30-some miles to visit him and his congregation in Rodney Heights, Ohio. And in that visit, he introduced Clan and myself to Jesus as friends. And that was not only a changing moment in my life, but it led to change. Ongoing transformation because of a friendship that led to a change. In humility, Paul wrote, "Consider others better than yourselves." Well, we have a hard time with that. The flip side of that, psychologists call narcissism. That's when I consider myself better than others. So what's the antidote for narcissism? Humility. Considering others better. And what that means is setting aside my agenda, what's important, what matters to me, for what matters to you, for your agenda. That doesn't come naturally to me. Maybe it does to you. But it doesn't come naturally to me. And we see that in a very profound way. Greater love hath no man than this, that they do the same thing for me. That I would give my lives for them because they would give their lives for me. Now that's the ultimate sacrifice. That's the ultimate laying down of one's life for the sake of others. But we're asked to do that every day in little ways. Is it going to be my agenda, my life, my thing, my want? Or am I going to set that aside for you? Am I going to lay down what matters to me for what matters to you? I mean, your color paint on the wall instead of my color paint on the wall. The restaurant you want to go to instead of the restaurant I want to go to. The vacation that you dream of rather than the vacation I dream of. Are we talking about fulfilling wants and dreams and desires, or are we talking about character building? Character building is when I give up what I want for the sake of others. But all that begins with the question. How do I get my friends to Jesus? I get my friends to Jesus by being friends. By setting aside my circumstances, my agendas, my wants, and my desires, and my needs for the sake of others. That's what friends do. That's what friends are for. If your friends won't do that for you, who will? And if you don't do that for your friends, who will? And I believe that something powerful then is demonstrated and displayed. That they see, there's something about you that's different. There's something about you that makes you a more gracious and giving and caring and loving person. I don't see many people like